Hello and welcome to 12 Items or Less, an interview brought to you by the Pennsylvania Food Merchants Association that gives us a chance to sit down with our members and chat about what it is that makes them shine in the industry. I'm Liz Kemery, your host, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with members from 412 Food Rescue and Food Rescue Hero. 412 Food Rescue is out of the Pittsburgh area and they work on reducing food waste and food insecurity. They joined the Pennsylvania Food Merchants Association this year as associate members. And today I have the chance to speak with David Prim, Head of Partnerships and Growth, and Jennifer England, Senior Director of Partner Success. How are you guys today?
Great, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So are you ready to get started?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So first thing, if you could just please share a little bit more about your position and what you do with 412.
My role at 402 Food Rescue is to drive strategic partnerships with our Southwestern Pennsylvania food donors and also our nonprofit partners who receive the food donations and give the food to people that need it.
Okay, great.
And I work with Food Rescue Hero, which is the technology and operations platform. And we are currently sharing that with a number of other cities, and I help them adapt their operations to implement the technology successfully.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So for people who aren't familiar with 412 Food Rescue or Food Rescue Hero, can you give us one sentence that explains best what it is you do?
Yeah, I think it's one sentence, maybe two. It's good food belongs to people, not landfills. But primarily we're preventing, with the support of the network and the technology, is preventing perfectly good food from going to waste and redirecting that to those who are food insecure.
Okay, great. And your website has some great, but unfortunately startling statistics. We see that there's 30 to 40% of usable food being wasted globally. Yet, on the other hand, we have 1 in 7 people who are going hungry. And so we have this usable food, we have people who need it. What is it that 412 Food Rescue and Food Rescue Hero are doing to solve that problem?
Yeah, well, nearly half of the food that's wasted is actually wasted at consumer-facing businesses. So that's your members, that's grocery stores and other retail outlets, it's restaurants and institutions. And what we do is we work to make sure that that food gets to people who need it by leveraging our technology to reach out to volunteers so they can take it to where it needs to go. When you think about that 40% of food that's being wasted at consumer-facing businesses, it's a highly distributed network, right?
Mm-hmm.
Think of all of your members. Think of how many members you have, all the grocery stores, all the other retail outlets, restaurants, universities, schools, everything. It's an enormous number, right?
Yeah.
And most of the food that's being wasted is actually highly perishable. It's the fruits and vegetables that have to be used before they go bad. It's the sandwiches that are made for people to grab and go, but are left over at the end of the night. And that food is wasted, or that food is available, I should say, in small quantities at all of these different locations. And so it doesn't make sense to take a truck and drive around and pick up all that food, right? That does not make sense economically. But what does make sense is getting volunteers to do it. So we have over 12,000 volunteers in our network. And by using our technology, we can let them know, hey, there's food available at this grocery store that needs to go to this low-income housing site. Can you pick it up? And our volunteers are able to work within their schedule to get that food, that small amount of food, maybe 100 pounds of food, maybe 50 pounds of food, and take it to where it needs to go.
I mean, the important thing is really getting that fresh food to people who need it, because so much of it comes, so much of it that is donated, comes from the public as, non-perishable canned food. So it's super important to make sure that people know that it's those fresh items that tend to be more expensive, actually, that people need to get their hands on.
And it doesn't just impact hunger, it impacts health.
Yes.
To donate that kind of fresh food. We see the health outcomes for people who are receiving donated fresh food are better because they have access to the non-processed, healthy, nutrient-dense food that their doctors are telling them they should eat.
Where do you guys cover? I know you're out of the Pittsburgh area, but what is your coverage area as far as where you try to service people?
Sure. So the name 412 Food Rescue refers to the area code in the Pittsburgh and Allegheny County area. People are familiar with the 412 sort of logo that is popular within the city, and that's where 412 Food Rescue gets its name. And our focus is on the southwestern Pennsylvania region. So that would be Pittsburgh, Allegheny County, but also surrounding counties such as Westmoreland, Beaver, Butler, Fayette, Washington. We support not only those areas by working with food donors to collect those highly perishable produce and bakery donations from local grocery stores, but also partnering with the nonprofit pantries and after-school programs and other community groups to make sure that the food can be used. And we utilize the Food Rescue Hero technology to make that happen.
Yeah, and the
That's
Food Rescue
fantastic.
Hero technology is in use currently in 13 cities around the country and in Canada, including 2 in Pennsylvania. We are, well, 3, 2.5. So Philly Food Rescue was one of our first partners to utilize the technology. And then Lake Erie Food Rescue is planning to come online in the fall.
If you have someone who's listening or watching and wants to get in touch with you, anyone from outside the Pittsburgh area can still reach out and interact with
Yeah.
412 and Food Rescue Hero.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're always looking to grow our network. So we welcome conversations with people anywhere. And we've actually had some of our food donors have helped support our growth. So we're open to conversations.
That's fantastic. Now, I think that Food Rescue Hero is definitely a component that sets you apart from maybe other organizations that do this. But can you guys share what are a few things that make 412 and Food Rescue Hero unique in the space that people might not know about you?
Sure. Well, our co-founder has a background in tech startups. And so she really identified the need for not just food rescue, but for a technology that would support it. Food rescue without technology is very labor intensive, and it's really hard to grow and scale. And if you want to really increase the impact and save that food from going into the landfill and get it to people who need it, you need that technology assist. So our technology was created, it's purpose driven, we like to say. So it was created for food rescue. It's not something that we sort of jerry rigged to fit the bill. That's one thing. I think the second thing is we're very agile. And so we live to serve our partners, whether it's our food donors or our nonprofit partners or our volunteers. And so we want to meet our partners where they need us. So we turn on a dime, we fit into our partners' operations. We don't tell our grocery donors, for example, we're going to come at this time and you better be ready. We say, when do you need us? We'll be there. We'll be there when you need us. And then I think the third thing would be that this is also part of that agility, but we continue to evolve. So through the pandemic, we saw a rising need, not just for food, but for access, because, I don't know about you, but I got my groceries delivered throughout the pandemic.
Sure.
And for a lot of people who were vulnerable, they didn't have that option. They had to go to the food pantry. So we started doing home deliveries during the pandemic, partnering with pantries and other organizations to get food to people's doors. So if they are, medically vulnerable, if they're elderly, if they're disabled, they don't have to try to figure out how they're going to get to a pantry. They have the same convenience that you and I have.
Food waste and food insecurity are clearly what you guys are all about. What would you say are other things that are important issues to you that you want to make sure the organization is accomplishing?
I would say food access. So we believe that convenience is a right. not an entitlement, that everyone should have access to food conveniently and easily. It should help them get through the day. It shouldn't be a burden to access food. So we have expanded our partner network where we distribute food to meet people where they are. We work with things like low-income daycare centers, so that a parent who, may be dropping their kids off by the bus to take them to the daycare and then go to work on the bus, they can just grab a bag of groceries when they come to pick up their kids. Or we work with low income housing sites so that, seniors just have to come down to the common room to get food. So we really, really believe that we don't want to just increase, food at one location and make people come get it. We want to increase access by bringing it to where they are.
412 has certainly seen an increase in doing the food rescues, providing food to people. And I think you've hit some pretty major milestones recently as far as that's concerned. Can you share what that is and what that means to the organization?
Yeah, definitely. In terms of milestones, organizationally, we're in our 6th year of operation now, and it's pretty exciting to be a part of something that has evolved from, the first days, but to now a growing organization with processes in place that allow us to, efficiently, effectively, and safely coordinate the donation of more than 20 million pounds of food. So we just hit that 20 million pounds mark here in our region. And that's, through the great efforts and support of our food donors and a lot of the PFMA members. For example, since 2019, we just recently have recovered more than 2 million pounds of donated food items from our Giant Eagle partners in southwestern Pennsylvania. So a lot of our work is based on the support, but also, the close partnership and collaboration from the food donors.
Why did you want to become an associate member with us?
Yeah, so we want to support your members and build our network, but primarily, help your members identify the opportunities that allow them to minimize the costs associated with food waste and recognize that there are financial benefits such as enhanced tax incentives associated with donated food. There's zero value in wasted food, but together, working with your members and working with other food donor partners, we're able to create this value that impacts the entire community. And also, the one thing that I mentioned earlier with being in business for 6 years and operating for 6 years, we're able to do this by sharing our established and our trusted and our fully interchangeable platform that works in every community with, and so for example, if a store does have an existing food donation partnership with a local church or a local nonprofit, we're able to seamlessly integrate into that existing process and provide the additional technology support and the logistics component that helps not only the food donor, but also the nonprofit. For example, they don't have to worry about arranging transportation amongst one of their own volunteers to make the pickup at the local grocery store. So really, we're hoping that through our membership with PMFA to focus on providing those benefits.
For people who are considering partnering with you, who may have considered this kind of on the fence, what are the common questions that you get from new members or potential partners?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think the most common one is we're not allowed, we'll get sued. What happens if somebody gets sick? There is liability protection at both the federal and the state level. The Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Act is a federal law which protects food donors when they donate food to a charitable organization. But that's not enough, because no business wants to be the one that has made somebody sick, right? So it's not just about protection from liability. It's also about protection from the sort of public relations disaster that it would be if someone got sick because your food wasn't handled correctly. And so, as David said, we bring to the table an expertise on how to make sure that their food is handled safely. And the technology lets us track that food from pickup to drop off. And so we know, that the food that's picked up at the grocery store is out of refrigeration for less than 30 minutes before it's dropped off. And it is, no more risky than having somebody purchase food from your store and take it home. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, as David said, we're already partnering with somebody. We come in, we say we're not the and, we're not the or, we're the and. So we can work to help those organizations that are already receiving food pick up. We can provide volunteers so they don't have to. Or we can work around them and pick up the things that they're not picking up. So a lot of grocery stores are already donating bread, for example, but they're not donating their produce because, again, for a typical food pantry, produce needs to be used quickly. It might not work for them, but because of our expanded network, we're able to rescue really anything they have in the store, regardless of how short the shelf life is, and get it to where it can be used. They're also concerned that it's going to be difficult for their team members, that it's going to be a lot of work. But again, we work to integrate into their operations so that it is no extra burden or as little extra burden for the donor as possible. That's really important to us, that we know that they're very busy. We don't want to have them to have to go out of their way to make this food available for donation. And then I think the final thing is, are you going to show up? Because a lot of nonprofit partners and food rescue organizations that rely on volunteers, sometimes the volunteer just stops coming. And if you don't have technology, you don't know that, but we know that. So if one of our volunteers, for whatever reason, gets a flat tire or gets sick or goes on vacation and forgets to request a sub, we know that that rescue hasn't happened and we can send another volunteer. And so we're able to provide really reliable service. We're not going to flake on our donors. We will be there when we say we're going to be there.
So you guys are making this easy. I mean, you're providing options. Like you said earlier, you're agile, you're accessible, you're making this convenient. And so anybody that is considering this or hasn't thought about how they can do this in a way that makes it easier on them, I mean, really, that's the answer, is you guys are really taking care of this all around and making it so that it works for the organization. That's great. Have you guys heard of any other, myths or misconceptions from people, from companies and organizations that are maybe interested in doing this, but have heard of things that might make them consider otherwise?
I think, perhaps possibly in the misconception category is when we approach the store owners or a franchise owner of a couple grocery stores, for example, they'll immediately think that they don't have food to donate. They'll say that, well, we don't waste anything, or, the food is being donated somewhere else, or, they have this sort of thought around that they are already doing what's necessary or donating as much as they can. And so what we usually encourage them to do is to speak with their produce manager, their bakery manager, start that dialogue directly, and we can sort of do even like a food waste audit where we're able to help them over a course of a week just identify opportunities for a donation, so that way fresh produce that may be making its way into the dumpster is now able to be donated 2 times a week. And we just actually experienced this recently with a new store that we onboarded with a PMFA member. And when they were donating the food initially, when we set up the relationship, they were saying, well, let's see how it works out. And within the first 2 weeks, they had already donated 3,500 pounds of fresh produce and bakery items.
Wow, that's
going
great.
to equate into 3,000 meals. Plus, it's also providing them that waste management savings, because now they're not putting it in the dumpster. They're able to then claim that on the federal tax deductions as well, working with their accountants. So again, that whole story about initially thinking we don't have food to donate is probably a misconception, most likely. And we would love to, work with your members and others to just identify what could be donated and where that can go into the community.
So we did touch on this briefly. Clearly, the last year and a half has affected everybody everywhere. And things like food donations, food insecurity have been very important and sort of more upfront maybe than in a typical year, given everything that happened with the pandemic. If you can go back to January 2020, which feels like a lifetime ago, and provide yourself some advice, kind of knowing what you know now, what is it that you would say or think to yourself, 18 months ago?
Yeah, stay resilient and remain grateful. We experienced 412 Food Rescue as an organization, Food Rescue Hero as our greater network partners. We experienced record donation volumes during the shutdowns, and we were able to take that donated food and help meet the demands, all while we were building new safety protocols that all of us were learning about each day. Between sanitizing, masks, social distancing, these were all new phrases that were entering our vocabulary as we continue to try and operate to, secure and rescue record amount of food donations, and also to get that into the community where we're experiencing record amounts of food insecurity. So I think that, and just remaining grateful, staying grateful to all the local volunteers, all of our community partners, the foundations, all of the individual donors, everyone that continued to support our operations during COVID, and those who are going to, we believe, keep supporting us for the next 5 years and beyond.
That's
Yeah,
great.
I
Jen,
would just reiterate that. I can't say it any better than that. Stay resilient and remain grateful. I think that hits the nail on the head.
Yeah, very, very true. Absolutely. So as we wrap up today, we've covered a lot of great information. Thank you so much for sharing more about your organization and not only everything that you've been able to accomplish in the 412 area, but far beyond that with the technology and the convenience and your growing group of volunteers. I think all of that makes this a no-brainer for people who are willing to step up and see what they can do as far as food donation and hopefully solving some food insecurity in their communities. What is a takeaway that you want viewers and listeners to have as we close up?
Yeah, well, I actually have two things.
Oh, sure.
A food recovery program utilizing 412 Food Rescue's technology and operations, it has no downside. There's no value to food in the garbage. It's a win-win-win to donate food. I think that's the first thing I would say. And then the second thing I would say is, if you want to know more about this but are reluctant to jump right in, download the app and do a rescue if you're in the area. I mean, nothing is more satisfying than picking up food that was, we see this beautiful produce like yellow bananas, right? Nobody wants to buy yellow bananas. So, or an apple with a bruise, but it's still, I'd eat it, right?
Right.
If that were in my counter, I'd eat it, no problem. You see these boxes of beautiful produce that are pulled off the shelf, going to someone who needs it, and you're handing the box to somebody who is going to use that. In a lot of these places that we distribute to, the residents are the volunteers. The people who need the food are the volunteers. They're receiving the food, so you can see the impact firsthand. So I would say that I would really encourage donors, potential donors, to volunteer, to see what it's all about.
That's fantastic. That's a great point, because sometimes you just, you don't know any better than doing it firsthand. So excellent. David, was there anything else that you wanted to add to that?
No, Jen said it perfectly. Thanks so much for having us, Liz.
Yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate your time. It was great to learn more about your organization, and best of luck. You guys are doing amazing things.
Thank you. And thanks to all of your members that have worked so hard through this pandemic to make sure people keep fed. I just want to say that the people that work in these grocery stores and in the retail food outlets were some of the real heroes of the pandemic. They were the ones that were on the front line. So just thank you and shout out to everybody who kept right on working.
Definitely. Thank you, PFMA.